Hey, everybody. Thursday, the closing line, September 21st, presented by SportsbookReview.com. But your host today, as usual, Donnie Rightside. Very special guest presenter today, Teddy Severansky. Follow him at Teddy_covers. As we know him as Teddy Covers, your host of SportsBit. See it all over the website for us here. You can also follow his stuff at SBR Sports Picks and SportsbookReview.com. Teddy, what's good today, brother?
Donnie Rightside. What's a good word? So, Donnie, okay, here's the story. Like, my last name is Severansky. Severansky does not roll off the tongue. You know, Teddy Covers. I was nicknamed Teddy Covers early. I didn't pick it. Someone nicknamed it. I'm like, I love this nickname, dude. That's great. And it stuck, and I've been called Teddy Covers since. At one point, I was thinking about legally changing my name to Teddy Covers. I didn't bother. But I got it service marked. If anyone else tries to use it, I can sue them. What's the story with Donnie Rightside? Where'd that come from? Do you have a real last name?
That's my Teddy. Come on, that's my real last name. Actually trademarked. Yes.
Sweet. Come on.
No, it's not. Rightside Valley Plays was my original website there. Somebody just gave me the moniker Donnie Rightside. Just went after that. It's not my real name, obviously. I always like to joke that it is my last name, but it is kind of a funny story. But yeah, somebody actually gave that to me about 5 or 6 years ago. Just ran with it there. Just rolls off the tongue. Same thing. Hey, that's Teddy Covers over there. Hey, Donnie Rightside's over there.
It's got a nice ring to it. So have you and I ever done a show, just you and I? I don't think we've done roundtables.
No, not just me and you. I know you came on the roundtable during baseball season. We had that on Wednesday, but no, we've never had a one-on-one live session here with us, Teddy.
So what's it going to be like? The drama builds. Dun, dun, dun.
The drama builds. We're only going to be held to our winning standards here tonight, Teddy. Nothing less.
Tonight, it's afternoon in Vegas, baby.
Exactly. Yep, about 6 o'clock here East. What we'll do, typical in the show, guys, when you tune in here on the closing line, we'll pick out a couple games here. There's still some meat left on the bone in Major League Baseball. We'll pick Teddy's brain a little bit on some Major League Baseball action. But we know, guys, Thursday night, you got a Thursday night football game. How good is it going to be? We've laughed about it all week. Hopefully it comes in a little bit better than what our prognosis is, maybe a 3-0 game. There's also a college football game tonight, and of course, college football on Friday, and then you know the deal on Saturdays and Sundays, Teddy. Couple games in Major League Baseball already underway or finished today. The Dodgers escape Philadelphia, Teddy, with a win. How about that in the 4-game series, huh?
So I went into September saying I got to fade the Dodgers. I made a little bit of money when they had, when they lost, what was it, 14 out of 15, 15 out of 16. I didn't make nearly as much as I should have. They righted the ship. I'm like, all right, the Dodgers righted the ship. I was expecting what happened, and I was expecting something of a turnaround the last couple of weeks. And, of course, they go to Philly and they lose. They get bombed the first couple of games of that series. I'm a little bit baffled right now as to what to do with the Dodgers. I'll be honest. Part of me thinks that, look, the Dodgers still are that Dodger team that was the best team we've ever seen, and they played that for 4 months, And part of me thinks, hey, this is not a franchise with a recent track record of postseason success. It's not a group of starting pitchers with a recent track record of postseason success. I got concerns about the Dodgers, and I went into September expecting a decline and expecting to like the Dodgers going in October. All of a sudden, I'm a little bit nervous about that, especially the way that some of the other contenders have been playing.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the season as a whole, I mean, for a while, people were saying, hey, Dodgers going to threaten that 116 games, knock the Seattle Mariners out of that time. And for a while, it was almost believable. You had the perfect storm, great clutch hitting, great starting pitching, and a fantastic bullpen. Where they lost their way, I don't know. But, Teddy, coming down the stretch here with the Los Angeles Dodgers, obviously when you have that big lead, you're going to be a playoff team. So much for jockeying for position. You're going to get in. Is it something that, the Dodgers take their foot off the gas and say, you know what, let's limit some things down. Let's just not get hurt. Let's play for the playoffs. Can that be detrimental to a Major League Baseball team? Because we've seen it before in other sports. You can't just flip that light switch back on.
It could be. I mean, Dave Roberts, and I read a couple of really good quotes. If you're serious about betting September baseball, there's a lot of nuance involved, and you have to be reading what the managers are saying, and you have to be reading what the GMs are saying. Because that's where you can get a sense of these are the guys we're trying to highlight. These are situations we're trying to look at. And going in September, I got some great quotes from Dave Roberts saying, we want to find out, who the last guys on the roster are going to be. We're going to put people in some uncomfortable situations for them and see how they respond to that. And they did that, and they lost, and they kept losing. Postseason momentum, there's a fair bit of randomness there, Donnie. We can think of the Rockies team that came out of nowhere and won 22 out of 23 and made it all the way to the World
Series.
Beat
up my Phillies.
They won every game down the stretch in the wild card game and all of that. And then we can think of plenty of other examples of teams that were red hot down the stretch. They went to the postseason, and it just, including the Dodgers last year, and it didn't carry over. So, the jury's out on the Dodgers right now. They were as good a baseball team as I've ever seen for the better part of 4 months. I mean, ever. But that doesn't mean that that 4 month span necessarily carries over to October. It doesn't.
No, you're exactly right. Other game in progress right now, Teddy, with some playoff implications. 9-19, 9-20, 4-1 lead for Cleveland at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Salazar and Bridwell on the mound today. Almost exact opposites here, Teddy. Struggling, scuffling throughout middle of the summer. The Cleveland Indians all of a sudden turned on the gas. They now look like the team to be playing hot at the end of the year going into the playoffs. Obviously, Teddy, much better than, having to flip the light switch back on, getting your confidence back and doing that. Do you see the Los Angeles Angels possibly getting into the playoff picture, making into the playoffs? I like the trades that they made at the deadline and on the waiver wire. I don't know if they have enough starting pitching to make any noise, but it's always nice to see Mike Trout make a run into the playoffs, hopefully.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. This is how many baseball bets I've made this week. 0.
Me too.
I haven't made one. No, that's not true. I bet on the Twins the first game of the series, and they got bombed. I didn't like them the second game. We used them for play of the day on the Yankees, in fact, with Sabathia on the hill. But I mean, that's literally the only series I've had any action on all week. When you're talking about this stage of the campaign, information is key. And if you're not fully focused on baseball, you're doing yourself a disservice. And right now, I mean, as we get to September, my focus is on football. And the first couple of weeks, you kind of carry, you're still riding the same teams and the same pitchers you were riding or betting against the same team. And as September moves on to the last week, in the last 10 days of the season, I mean, the Angels right now, shit, they've been betting the hell out of the Angels all week, dude. And they keep, they're losing at home to Houston. They bet them again today. I'm surprised by the love for the markets for the Angels in this series. Let's put it that way. In terms of who gets the second AL wild card, I mean, Minnesota doesn't want it that bad. Okay, Minnesota or the Angels, and both teams are losing going in right now. So it's not like someone's reaching up and grabbing it. And then then Seattle as the third team in contention. I mean, if you bet against we did a feature on Sportsbook the other day. With the September records of the AL wildcard contenders. The Yankees, with the first wildcard spot, were in great shape. If you looked at the other, where there's like 6 or 7 of them going into September, and just bet against every one of them every day, you're up a fortune right now. Not one of them, Donnie, has a winning record in the month of September.
Yeah, I mean, because we always like to look at, there's still some meat left on the bone, so to speak, but throughout the summer, you have a good feel. Most Major League Baseball teams, even after the All-Star break, still feel they can compete, come into the ball yard every day. That mindset shifts in September, obviously with the call-ups that are coming out, the haves and the have-nots, one team gearing up for the playoffs, the other just wanting to see the young 19-year-old closer coming in the 7th inning, how he can handle, or you just throw a kid up there to pinch hit in the 9th inning. So it sort of throws that money balance off. We always like to call false flags during the summer, like why is the money moving in a certain direction? I find heading into September, that money movement doesn't matter as much as it did during the summer. Just for case in point, saying, everybody still has a job in the summer. You're still looking to go out and put some stats up. By the end of the year, you're looking not to get hurt. You're looking at contract numbers. I need to hit 2 more home runs so I can hit 30 home runs for the year. It's going to look much better for me. So a lot of baseball technically goes out the window. That's why I stop until at least the playoffs begin there. Your philosophy, Teddy, on betting in September, and I just got the gist of it there. Haven't had many wagers there. Do you stop because it's just football season like I heard, but overall capping the game? Because I find it myself, even if you dig in deep here, Teddy, it's still hard to find winners because there's a lot of variance with the expanded rosters and lineups here in September.
Well, that's an excellent point, Donnie, because you talk about, you find some info, hey, so-and-so is going to start 5 rookies tomorrow. And guess what? They get a jolt of energy from the 5 rookies where the veterans were sitting there just playing out the string, and they're a much better team, even though the markets have devalued them completely because they have 5 rookies in the lineup. What I'm most interested in information-wise in September is how a manager is going to approach his pitching staff. The other thing I want to do in September is you want to ride these streaks. The teams that have mentally checked out, Tigers had a good run betting against the Tigers. Pirates now are a team that, a team that expected to be in contention. They fought the good fight and they're done fighting the good fight. Baltimore, another example of a team that down the stretch. If you're betting baseball, in my mind, some of this stuff is auto fade. I'm going to bet against the Tigers. I'm going to bet against the Orioles. I'm going to bet against, I had a great run betting against the White Sox for a little while. I mean, you find these teams to fade, and you just and literally you bet them until they win 2 in a row, and then you may continue to bet them, but you reevaluate at that point and decide if you want to continue that fade. And in my mind, that's probably the optimal way to attack September baseball. Find your fades, find your bet-ons, and just do it religiously until proven otherwise.
No, absolutely. Folks, you're just tuning in to the closing line for September 21st. Don't be alarmed. It's Donnie Rightside and Teddy Covers here. We're going to be going over a couple games here in just a few moments. Teddy, Major League Baseball, a few things still to clean up here on the card tonight. Why don't we take a look at a couple and just give some generalities and some thoughts? I picked 5 games just to be specific. Some teams still in the playoffs, but the first one is interesting to me. 903, 904 on the rotation, Teddy. St. Louis and Cincinnati. It's Martinez and Bailey. Mismatch on paper, yes. But the reason I picked this game out, the fun that Jeff and I had on the right side of campus all throughout the summer, typically centered around Homer Bailey, who seems to not be able to get anybody out, but for some reason takes on sharp money left and right. Today, the exact opposite. Pinnacle opens up, Teddy, at -138. It's now sitting at 188. Chris opened up at -140. Now sitting at -186, -190s. Bovada even showing a -200 across the board. Is everybody finally off the Homer Bailey train that, the Reds are at home, they have value here?
The markets speak volumes, and look, there's not much love for Cincy in the markets right now. And St. Louis, of course, is being priced like a must-win team, which they are. If you can find a must-win team that gets hot, you can make money with them. If you find a must-win team that's playing middling baseball, like all those American League must-win teams, you're going to get crushed. St. Louis had that bad series. They bounced back with a nice win yesterday. Everyone was on. There was a huge move on Luke Weaver. And we talked about that on SportsBit, with Weaver being a guy that the markets like. But, what's today? Thursday? On Wednesday, there were all these MLB favorites that got bet up, and basically all those moves won. The bettors won. They bet St. Louis up. They bet the Yankees up, and the Red Sox, on and on. There was 4 or 5 of them. The Astros took money and won. And we're certainly seeing signs of that today. There's a lot of chalk that's getting bet up, and the bettors think they once again have right side. I wouldn't argue with that. With the Cincinnati money, I thought it was. At first glance, it was noticeably cheap. Although Martinez, we know how fast he throws. He's one of the top 3 in velocity in all of baseball. But in terms of current form, his consistency hasn't quite been there.
Yeah, next up here, Teddy, 905, 906, Washington and Atlanta. Another team, basically wrapped up the NL East, Teddy, by, July 1st in all intents and purposes. Roark versus Dickey tonight. If we take a look at the lines there, line going in Dickey's direction, opened up at -133 at Pinnacle, down to -128. Chris opened up about the same, -135, but we're seeing in that low 130s here across the board. Taking a look at the last few starts, Roark actually has been decent there, a 2.84 ERA. R.A. Dickey over his last 3 starts tuned up. Teddy, we're talking 5 earned runs through 5 innings in one game. The game before that, 5 innings, 5 earned runs, and before that, 4 1/3, 6 earned runs. But it seems to be that he's taking a little bit of money. Maybe some people looking at the home dog here, Atlanta. We all know that ballpark is a launch pad similar to what Fulton County Stadium was, and after that, the previous ballpark that the Braves played at, Turner Field, excuse me. Something like this tonight with Washington just trying to get right for the playoffs, you just take a shot with the knuckleballer, because if it's on, it's tough to hit.
Yeah, Dickey's a guy who is knuckleballers in general. It wasn't just Dick. Like, I remember when Tim Wakefield, he used to get in the zone and you bet on him until, his overall season numbers be very mediocre. And then, boom, he'd find it. And then you bet on him the next, until he lost it again. And Dickey's been the same way. He's been that way. He's been a streaky pitcher all year. When he's found his rhythm, there's been money to a little bit of money made with R.A. Dickey. And when he's been off, like he has been here in September, there's been no money with that. But this game, I got no opinion at all, Donnie. It was the type of game that I'm going to put literally 2 minutes into and say, nope, move on to the next
football.
You have to prioritize your time. You have to. Especially it's not like you and I sitting here with, we have staffs of hundreds that are going to run, and it's not like I would trust anyone else to do what I do anyway. You can't delegate. Say, oh, why don't you delegate? It doesn't work.
2 eyes and 1 brain, Teddy. That's all we got, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, this was not a game I put much time into.
We'll wrap up one more game here in Major League Baseball before we get to the meat and potatoes. We'll talk some college football and NFL football here. 9:07, 9:08, Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers here. Jake Arrieta is going to take the mound, seemingly pitching very well down the stretch, which has to be, the Cubs fans have to be very happy about that. Cubs also riding the ship, getting hot in September. Always a nice thing going versus Davies here. Yesterday, loss there for the Chicago Cubs. John Lester got tagged up a little bit. If we take a look at the betting numbers in this one, Teddy opened at 129, sitting about the same at Pinnacle, 127. Chris at 129. Sportsbook.com at minus 130. Anything for the live dog? Milwaukee still trying to play into the playoffs, a game or two back here going against the Cubs. Any advantages here? Because Arrieta's been really good, but I was reading up some information that he might be on a pitch count tonight. How would that factor in going into this ball game for you, Teddy?
It would factor in significantly if the Cubs didn't have a great bullpen to go along with a great lineup and a great starter, But when you talk about guys being on a pitch count, when you're talking about situations, what was the game? Was it today? There was some. Well, I was trying to remember the game I was looking at where they were gonna have two startart the Pirates that was talking about doing it, right? It must have been yesterday. They were gonna start one guy, start the one and then bring Glasnow in off the. So those situations are unique sometimes, but it all comes down to who's coming in off the bench. It's not just like, it's not about how much Andrew Luck is worth. It's what's the difference between Andrew Luck and Scott Tolzien. It's not a matter of, okay, so-and-so's on a pitch count, therefore he's completely devalued. It's who's going to be in the game after him, So it's not a situation where we're overly concerned about a pitch count for Arrieta. And you talk about a guy who's been a moneymaker, Davies has been a pretty good moneymaker for the Brewers. And he's a guy who the advanced metrics don't love, Davies, and that's one of the reasons why he's been such a moneymaker. It's because he is succeeding despite the fact the advanced metrics say, oh, he's overachieving. And the pitchers that succeed without the positive advanced metrics, those are probably my favorite guys in the world because the markets never catch up to them. And there's always a fade of guys like Zach Davies. And if they're in good form, you can make money with them. So, yeah, it'd be home dog or nothing for me in that one.
Yep, looks like over-under opened up at 8.5, now currently bet to 9. But that's a short card that we were looking at, especially on Thursdays. But meat and potatoes time. Let's get to some college football. Teddy, we have college football on tonight, 3:03, 3:04 from the Northeast. My Temple Owls are in play tonight, heading down to Raymond James Stadium to take on the South Florida Bulls. Looks like market spreads here from the numbers I'm getting, close to 8 out of every 10 tickets heading spread-wise to the South Florida Bulls here. Opened up at 19, but Teddy, we've seen some movement today in this game. It's been hovering that 20.5, 20, 19.5, 19, but now some different numbers popping up on the board. Chris showing a 17.5, bet online 17.5, the Greek at 18. So it looks like some bettors are trying to scalp that number and take Temple with the points. Lead us in the right direction here.
Temple hasn't come close to covering a number yet this season, really. They're a team that was as physical as any in college football last year. That is now getting, you couldn't tell it between them and UMass in the trenches last week. Okay. Temple last year was running the ball down people's throat. This year, their top 4 backs, none of them are getting better than 3.7 yards per carry. Now, this is a different role for Temple. We've seen them at home in a bully role. They're not good at home in a bully role. Now they're on the highway and they're catching a whole bunch of points, which is very different than obviously laying with the 0-3 ATS mark. So the market's reacting to that. But USF is a one-way team for me. I'm either betting on that team or I'm not getting involved. Willie Taggart, we saw what Willie Taggart did at Western Kentucky. Okay. After he left, that program didn't decline. They were right there. He built a program. When Willie Taggart arrived in South Florida, it wasn't like they've been down forever. The Jim Leavitt era wasn't as bad. The team was a top 5 team in the country. Didn't they reach number 1 at one point or something stupid like that? From the
they were very good at the Leavitt, yeah.
Yeah. And then, it kind of declined at the end. And Taggart got there and they go, 3-9 before the year before he gets there, and 2-10 the first year, and 4-8. He didn't take shortcuts. He built the program. USF is freaking loaded, man. That team is loaded. They are fast. They are juniors and seniors. What do they have? 16 senior starters or 17 upper class starters, 16 returning starters and 17 upper class starters. I mean, and you have Quentin Flowers, the QB, who, again, he doesn't have an NFL arm. We're not going to see him winning games on Sundays. But he has a college arm, and he makes a whole lot of plays with his feet too. That's a good football team. Temple, I worry about backing teams that haven't covered numbers yet. How bad is Temple? How low will they go? Maybe we find out tonight. So, yeah, it's a public side. Yeah, the wise guys like the other side. Who gives a shit? It's USF or nothing for me.
Yeah, when you step up to the bell, if you take a look at Temple, obviously opened the season versus Notre Dame, weren't very competitive, 49-16 final. Villanova, which, you want to say, it's a crosstown rival, but clearly two different types of programs, barely eking a win out, 16-13 on a late field goal. UMass, not a great football team, again, catching them at home, 29-21 final. If we look at San Jose State game, the first one that USF played in, Quentin Flowers was out of that game damn near early third quarter there. Breeze past Stony Brook. That's one of those games, 31-17. You say, what's going on with South Florida? Hey, sometimes these kids get in these football games. They know they're going to win. Don't take it all that serious. That's probably what happened. They righted the ship nicely there. Illinois, not a great football program, but 47-23 final. The one question I have with this game, Teddy, is do you think from Temple's perspective here, obviously Jeff Collins, defensive head coach, Temple's not ready to get in a running game, or shouldn't I say running game, but a running track meet up and down the field with South Florida. Any ideas on what Temple's game plan should be in this one? Running the football with Armstead, slowing it down, keeping Flowers off the field, trying to play close into the fourth quarter, because I see the over-under in this one opened up at 58.5, now currently sitting up 63.5. So points are expected here, but you can't really get into a shootout with South Florida and play their game, can you?
The only way Temple covers his number is if it stays under. Temple correlates with under. And that's Jeff Collins' game plan here. All these backs and this offensive line that hasn't been able to be physical with anyone, they have to be able to grind out clock on the ground and shorten the game for them to remain competitive in this contest. Because as you're absolutely right, they cannot trade points with USF. So it's a situation where, in my opinion, there's a definite correlation there.
I technically would agree with that. Let's take a look at some Friday night football games here. We'll breeze.
No, just let me jump in real quick because it's important to note. Favorite and over don't have the same level of correlation. Okay, I could see South Florida winning the game, 42-7 or something, and it's not like that game's flying over the total. But dog and under, there is legitimate correlation between the two.
No, it's a good point. It's definitely something to check out. If I had to bet the game, that early line at 20.5, it's a lot of points. You're expecting Temple to get blown out in that one. Obviously, I would lean towards the points. But again, a lot of people don't, the casual bettor, that full regime change at Temple. You lost a lot of stud players over the past 2 to 3 years. Lost your head coach down the Baylor. So they're still trying to find their way. Not a great time to find your way going down to South Florida. But I agree. Only way Temple for me is going to win the football game if they slow it down.
Yeah, Temple doesn't send quarterbacks to the NFL. You understand? We saw Philip Walker playing in the NFL this preseason. You know what I mean? So that's the level of talent that they have to replace, and that program doesn't replace talent like that very easily.
Next year up on the docket, Teddy, 3:05, 3:06. We're going to go Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Virginia and Boise State. Interesting betting lines here, 80%, Teddy, again. So we're getting some, heavy leans going one way to Virginia. Line opened up at 12.5, now currently sitting at 13. Chris is at 12.5, sportsbook.com 13. Bet Online is at 13. I know Rippon did get upgraded to probable, but they're not even sure if he's even going to start or play. They're basically saying he cleared concussion protocol. If we need him in an emergency situation, he can play. But heck, college football, you don't have to give, your game plan right away. He might be the starter in this football game. So you saw a little bit of a buyback going towards Boise heading up. If we take a look at overall their seasons, Virginia beat Connecticut 38-18. Connecticut's not a very good football team. Lost to a pretty good Indiana team, 34-17. If we flip it over to Boise State, not so much a cover machine anymore there. Backdoor cover for New Mexico, 28-14. Washington State, 47-44. Close one in that one as well. Teddy, what do you see out of this ball game? This isn't our, I like to say our grandparents' Boise State team out here. Not as talented as there used to be and not covering a lot of big numbers at home.
The question is this a big number? Boise's been a point spread disaster as home chalk. They got them one. They covered one of their last 11 in this role. They are, not making money for their supporters on a consistent basis. On Sportsbook, we cashed a play of the day winner with New Mexico. plus the points last week, although that was a wrong side winner. But I'll take wrong side winners when I can get them.
Yep.
And I'm any
they all count the same.
But Boise has impressed me in one regard this season. The defense head and shoulders better than I thought it was going to be. Head and shoulders. This is a defense that created 8 turnovers last year. 8 for the season. And you go down the recruiting rankings for Boise, and they're, the level of defender that they were getting in the Chris Peterson era has not translated to the modern era of Boise football. So, it's the defense. What are they giving up? 4 touchdowns in 3 games in regulation, and one of them was on a garbage drive. It was the garbage drive to New Mexico through the back door when the Lobos came through the back door at the end of the game, and it was all Boise second stringers on the field against them. New Mexico didn't even place a third down on that. So really, the first string defense giving up 3 touchdowns in 3 games. That's a lot better than I thought they were going to be. If Rippon plays, this line's going to get up to 2 touchdowns. So, but it's a situation where do you trust the line service? No, we do not trust the line service. If you want to find out what Rippon's status is, Twitter's going to be your number one way to do it. And if you're following your Twitter account in the hours before kickoff, you'll get a note. You will find information on that, and you'll have it before the markets do, and oftentimes before the line services do. But you got to be, obviously, have your tweet deck program to track that.
Yeah, there's always interesting stuff like that. And we've even got information, Jeff and I know you probably have as well, just people at the ball game saying, hey, look, Rippon's running with the ones in pregame. And there you go. All of a sudden say, hey, looks like he's going to be in line to start, or, he's not even practicing, doesn't have his helmet on the field before the game. You can always get that information. That's the great thing about Twitter and, the new age coming through is now you can actually get simultaneous as maybe the bookmakers get it or your locals a little bit to move those numbers, and you have the information first. Use it to your advantage. I agree.
Yes.
Next up here, Teddy, for us. Why don't we keep it moving on Friday night, 10:30 p.m. time? Utah and Arizona, 307 and 308, 66% of the wagers coming in on the Utah Utes here. Line opened up at 4, now currently sitting at 3.5, pretty much across the board. We all saw Arizona, quote unquote, Teddy, get right versus UTEP, but who doesn't get right versus UTEP? Utah, a much tougher team coming in and playing them this weekend as a road favorite, always tough to play. I'm not a huge backer of Rich Rod in any type of circumstance. What do you see out of this football game that might give somebody an advantage here? Is it the home team, Rich Rod's hot seat? He has to win this football game? Because overall, I think Utah is the better football team here.
Sure, and yet the number's sitting at 3, and the sharper books are leaning towards Zona. What gives here? All right, This is something I look for a lot early in the season, because you talk about different strategies for different times of the year. It's not about how good football, sure. How good football teams are is reflected in a point spread. When you approach a college football season, there are various, we call them inflection points, same thing like you do in a poker tournament. Various times where, all right, things are going to change a little bit. All right, be aware, what you've seen so far may not be what you see moving forward. Utah has played 3 teams with really crappy offenses so far. They had San Jose, they had BYU, they had the 1AA foe in week 1. Yeah. And now they got to go at night, on the road, in front of the TV cameras, in the desert heat, and play a high-octane, fast-paced attack that, the quarter, they found their QB for sure last week. 3 touchdowns running, 3 touchdowns passing. And of course it's UTEP. Huge difference between the two. But it's Whittingham's quotes. If you're reading the quotes from the Utah side here, Kyle Whittingham. They've lost 4 of their last 5 against Arizona. They have not done a good job of containing Rich Rod's spread offense. So here's an offense that now has gotten a little bit of, they had the bad, I don't know, that game against Houston. It was a weird game. It really was. It was. I don't know if you watched that. Did you watch the Arizona-Houston game? It was just like,
yes. It's interesting. Obviously not what you expected from an Arizona football game with that low
score. There was no flow
scoring.
to it. Arizona was, they were shutting quarterbacks in. They were still trying to figure out who, Rich Rod was trying to figure out who was going to get it. And the offense didn't work there. I think it has a better chance of working against Utah in this game than it did against Houston in week 2.
Next up here on the docket, Teddy, why don't we skip over and pick one game on Saturday here? Just some interesting line movement on this one. 331, 332, Teddy. It's going to start 7:30 p.m. Eastern time Saturday night. Florida and Kentucky. About, 60% or so coming in currently here on Florida. If we take a look, the line opened at 2.5. Pinnacle now sitting at 1.5. Bet online 1.5. The Greek at 2. So some numbers going down in this one. And some people would scratch their head if you're just a casual bet. I said, wait a second. When did Kentucky even get competitive in football? I'm just going to take Florida all day long. Hey, Florida just beat Tennessee. Did you watch that football game? Something's got to give in this one. I mean, we've seen Kentucky trying to make that next step as a program for years here, finally stepping up against a Florida team, which technically they can beat. But do they have enough moxie? Is their program used to winning a game like beating Florida? They're not used to actually beating Florida themselves, but just winning that big football game in a big game environment. Looks like the odds makers giving Kentucky a lot of respect here, Teddy. What gives?
Well, it's not that's where the power ratings are. Florida's power rating hasn't gone up after any game this season. They went on a Hail Mary last. Well, it wasn't even a Hail Mary. They went on a blown defensive coverage for Tennessee last week.
Yep.
In a game where they blew a multi-score lead in that contest, or they blew a lead against the Vols. They were non-competitive week 1 against Michigan, although the defense stepped up and played well. And then they were, so it's not like this is a Gator team that everyone's super excited about betting Florida. No one who's been betting Florida for the last 5 years has been made money with Florida, since Urban Meyer left, there hasn't been any money to be made betting the Florida Gators. Not like the public's, oh, look at this, When you look at the pedigree of the players, they're grading out the players between these two squads. Kentucky doesn't win many positions, When you look at the series history, all right, what is it, 25 of the last 26 or 27 of the last 28? I mean, it's been pretty one-sided. Are those the type of things that are enough to get you to the betting window for Florida? The line is cheap. Kentucky's power rating's done nothing but this so far this season. Florida's power rating's done nothing but this so far this season. From a historical perspective, the line is really cheap. From an overall talent perspective, the line is really cheap. Does that matter? It's not like if Kentucky pulled off the upset here, it would be a huge shock to anyone. Yeah, they can play with a team like Florida, but that doesn't mean they will.
It's just kind of interesting because if you look at Florida, obviously we know the offensive struggles they have, losing Callaway, the suspensions, albeit not a lot of starters, but the distraction always is going to be something to keep in mind. Michigan, no shame in losing to Michigan. You beat a blue blood program in Tennessee, even though it was a sloppy game. You didn't really get going. I believe that game was like 6-3 heading into the fourth quarter, so not much going in either direction. But you take a look at it from Kentucky's perspective. You pull one out against Southern Miss 24-17. You play Eastern Kentucky 27-16. And South Carolina lose their best football player in the game, which you pull out a 23-13 victory. It's not like they're blowing teams out. Is that a good thing heading into this football game here, Teddy? Or is it one where it's saying, hey, you know what? We need all hands on deck to even win football games. That's the point. We're 3-0. If we can get to 4-0, we're probably going to be able to get to a bowl game here, and that's big as a Kentucky football program. Do you throw anything about previous performances in, or do you just get what you get here?
I'm not 100%. I don't fully understand the question.
They pulled out games versus teams that weren't very good. Again.
Come on, Donnie, smile, baby, smile. We're having fun. We got
they pulled out games. We got to get to some of these aren't very good.
Okay.
Yeah, like the 3-0. I mean, it's always nice. You're Kentucky. We'll just take the victory. We get it. But when you look at these teams being 3-0, the teams that they beat, not very good, and you didn't blow them off the map. Like you didn't take Eastern Kentucky apart 56-0. So, when we want to run and when we're better, we can do it. Heading into this football game, you anticipate it's going to be a lower scoring battle, but does Kentucky have enough? Because again, this is a lot of 5-star recruits on that Florida defense. This is probably the most talented team, obviously, that they faced this season. I just want to know, like, the mindset coming in Kentucky. Like, you're not saying, hey, let's step into this game. We're getting 7.5. We're getting 10. Let's play with them, and hopefully, we come close and the spread covers, whatever it would be. You actually have to win this football game, and you're expected to win this football game. Completely different mindset for Kentucky here.
Well, they've been competitive with Florida. It's not they've been getting blown off the field. Was it 14-9? One of the scores, a non-offensive TD. It's not. I don't think they could. Kentucky beat South Carolina on the road last week. That's a confidence-inducing victory. And it's not like South Carolina's, the markets don't love South Carolina, but whatever. It's an SEC team that's been better than you. We just went on the road and beat them for the 4th straight year or whatever it is. So, Kentucky's had their number. Obviously they've had no such success against the Florida Gators. Not in recent years, not in past years. Now, normally in the past, you're Kentucky, Florida, you're catching a bunch of points. And no, they don't have to win. They can just give them a game. And you're live to cover with the dog. In this point spread range, obviously, if you're betting Kentucky, you better hope they win or lose on a missed 2-point try at the end of the game or whatever. But I don't think that they're hopeless, that they're going in there going, oh, we can't beat Florida. No, they're a confident SEC football team that has been building. The program has been building for the last 4 or 5 years in the same direction. And it's not like a program that there's no continuity there. There is.
It should be interesting to watch them play out. It's good for them. They put that game at 7:30, little primetime action, before whatever Midnight Madness is going to start up in a couple weeks for them.
7:30. What coast are you on, man? It's 4:30.
No, Philadelphia runs the time here today, Teddy.
Hey, yeah. Just all sports betting time. It doesn't matter where you live. All sports betting time runs through Vegas. So.
Well, hopefully we'll be changed that in the next couple of years. We can get some professional gambling, so to speak, out of these circuit courts. Hopefully they can rule in New Jersey's favor, and everybody can eat the way Las Vegas eats for us there, Teddy.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, my friend. Yeah.
Next up, Teddy, let's get to some NFL football. You can actually question tonight whether it's NFL caliber football or not. 301-302, Rams, San Francisco 49ers, 3/4 of the tickets, Teddy, coming in currently here on the Los Angeles Rams. Opened up at 3, currently sitting at 3 across the board. I'm in the minority here, Teddy. I've been talking all week long. I'm always loving the home team on Thursday night to cover the games just because of the advantage that you have in practice time, in preparation time. The other team barely gets to practice, goes through a couple walkthroughs, flies up to the game, and you get what you get out of it. So I like to lean especially on a home dog at this point. Your thoughts on this game coming in? Because a lot of people I talk to, oh my God, the Rams, look at how good they are. They're playing really well. They were a bad football team. Goff looks amazingly better here. Look at the 49ers. They haven't scored a touchdown yet. But I have the San Francisco covering tonight, Teddy. Give me the 3.
Well, and now the line is at a full 3. You're allowed to take San Francisco. You weren't allowed to take San Francisco at 2 or 2.5.
Gotcha.
Because you knew that the market was going to move in this direction. The fact that the money's come on LA and bet it up to here is no surprise. And if you want to take a shot with the 49ers at the pull +3 right now, I wouldn't. I'll try to talk you out of it, but I'm not going to. How'd that theory of the home team do last week?
Did not work out.
How did it do week 1?
Well, week 1 I take out because that's not a true Thursday night game. But yeah, last week that one definitely did not go the right direction, which I thought it would go.
Sure, the road team won and covered week 1 as well, as we remember. I worry about rookie head coaches going on the road on a short week. However, you have a rookie head coach on the other side as well. So, in my mind, advantage mitigated. I got a great quote. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was from Gurley, from Todd Gurley, talking about the difference between this year's Rams and last year's Rams. Like last year's team would have lost 27-3 to the Redskins. The Redskins just gashed them on the ground. It's like last year we would have lost 27-3 in that game. This year we fought, and we ended up losing at the end, but it's really a step in the right direction. And certainly through 2 weeks, Goff's put up some very impressive numbers, from where it was a season ago. I worry about LA's run defense. The Redskins gashed him. Wade Phillips, for all the credit that he gets as a defensive coordinator, look at his numbers against the pass, and he designs tremendous pass defenses. He doesn't necessarily design tremendous run defenses. And why was the score so tight last week in Seattle? Because the 49ers were able to keep the ball on the ground and control clock and run the football. And if they do that against LA, they're live. But one team has an offense and one team really doesn't. The teams with the weak offenses in week 1, you look at them, the Jets struggled and the Giants struggled and the Bengals struggled and the 49ers struggled. And you can go down, there's about 7 or 8 teams that didn't reach double digits in week 1. And you know how many of those teams turned it around in week 2? None of them. Nary a one. Now, some of them covered, But, San Fran covered. They were catching all these points. Not tonight. Tonight they got a win to cover. I worry about that 49ers offense. And remember, Kyle Shanahan, we know Shanahan, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's not the first year in Kyle Shanahan's offense that you succeed. That is a complex offense. And it took 2 years in Cleveland, and it took 2 years in Atlanta. And here's a 49ers team that there's no continuity. They don't have a quarterback on the roster from last year. They don't have a wide receiver I think they have one wide receiver who caught a pass on the roster from a year ago. New coaching staff, new coordinators. It's going to take time for that San Fran offense to work. I don't trust them to move the football, even though LA was gashed on the ground a week ago.
Look at Carlos Hyde should have a nice advantage this one. Ran very well against a pretty sturdy Seattle defense. The one angle I like in this football game is if you look, most people are going to say, oh, my God, the Rams blew out, Indianapolis. Teddy, me and you could have went out there and blew out Indianapolis on that day. Anytime Scott Tolzien's out on the football field, it's going to be a disgraceful performance. Week 2, Washington had a great game plan out there and dominated for most parts of that Rams game, closed them out late. And I look at San Francisco, I think you're just getting a buy low option here because they played 2 really good defensive football teams right out of the gate. And albeit, yes, they did struggle, but I like the Thursday night angle at home. I just would lean on the points here now that it's getting plus 3 points. Looks like across the board in this one.
Well, I mean, when you talk about different times of the year, September NFL, this is what the basic strategy. Don't bet on the very worst teams. Your value will come with the very worst teams. There'll be time to bet the Jets. There'll be time to bet the Browns. There'll be time to bet the 49ers. There may be time to bet the Colts before this season is done, et cetera, et cetera. Not out of the gate because the markets don't price the worst teams badly enough in September. Look at this. Everyone knew that
coming into the season, Teddy, I actually have the Rams as one of the worst teams in the NFL, though.
Would you rank the Rams and the 49ers?
Me and Big Man have a bet there that they're not going to win 4 games. I don't think the Rams win 4 games this year total overall. If they don't win this San Francisco game, they might look when I was looking at the schedule, 1-10, 1-11 heading down the back stretch here. I don't think they're a good football team.
No, and in which case they have no business being 3-point road chalk. But that's the question is, if the Rams are a 7-win team, they're valid in this point spread range. If they are a 4-win team, there's no validity to the Rams in this point spread range. And that's, I'll take your over 4 bet.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think the original number was 5.5, but looking at their schedule, I thought that it was a great spot to bet them week 1. Loved it. Week 2, I was all over the Washington Redskins. Should have been a lot easier of a point spread cover in that one, but I'm really down on that football team. I think the defense, albeit is decent, I think it's a little bit overrated. I don't like the wide receiving core. I'm not a big fan of Jared Goff, and Todd Gurley can break down at any moment, and their schedule is unbelievably bad. Now, it did get a little bit of help from Arizona, basically going to be in the tank the rest of the year, but I don't see very many wins on that all the way through down their schedule. It's a tough one, man. Tough schedule.
Arizona's going to be in a tank for the rest of the year?
Arizona's going to be a bad football team from here on out, don't you think? Like, who can Arizona beat without, basically their only part of their offense? And Carson Palmer, bad quarterback. They have a very good defense, don't get me wrong. But Arizona winning any more than 6 games now in the season, that's a long shot.
Because a running back got hurt?
He's the only offense they have. What else do they have on that football team? They should have lost to the Colts last weekend. Sure. They were embarrassing.
And in the fourth quarter,
it's not going to get any better. You can't just reinvent David Johnson out there. You have an old wide receiver who's creaky at 34 best. They have 2 average wideouts on the side of him and a quarterback that can go down at any moment with no arm. There's no way they get to 6 wins this year now. No way.
You're crazy talk over here, Donnie. Okay, Arizona's gone on the road twice, okay? They went on the road, so we haven't even seen them at home yet, all right? Mm-hmm. You call them a 6-win team. This is a team that was lined at 8.5 and is 1-1
right now,
exactly where they're supposed to be.
Player,
exactly where they're supposed to be.
They lost maybe the MVP in football, though. You got to take up for that.
He's worth how much is David Johnson worth through a point spread if he's worth a half point? A half point at the most.
It doesn't matter what the point spread. Did you see them last week? They were down double digits to the Colts last week. Embarrassing. And they went to overtime.
And then what happened? What happened with the game on the line of the fourth? They're 3rd and 20. Their season is on the line. There's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're 3rd and 20. Deep in their own territory. What happens? Hey, man, some guy named JJ gets open. Nelson makes a play downfield, and then another one, and then boom, and then Palmer's throwing it on the to John Brown on the one side, and all of a sudden the passing game is working, and they're chucking it downfield. 2 mediocre receivers behind a 34-year-old guy, a running back worth something for a point spread. There's no running back in the NFL that's worth anything to a point spread.
This will be
and to say that a running back is going to affect a team by 2.5 wins is baffling to me.
Yes. No, dude, look at Arizona's football team. They are anemic. Carson Palmer is probably, if there's 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, he might be 30th right now. How are they going to move the football against good football teams and beat them? Their only chance this year was to give the ball to David Johnson 30 times a game to keep them in there. They were embarrassing versus the Colts, maybe the worst team over the last 5 to 6 years that we've seen. There's no
Johnny,
way
let's
now
have fun.
that they win.
Let's have, because I'm thoroughly enjoying this now. And again, this is all in good fun, okay? But you're going to tell me that Carson Palmer's 30th. You're going to rank him ahead of Hoyer?
He's awful. I probably would. Right now, I probably would. Have you seen him play, Teddy? Do you watch games?
I watched Arizona both games. Okay, I didn't watch them once. I watched them both. All right. I don't think it's Carson Palmer that's the problem for Arizona. Now, look, the irony, of course, is I'm arguing on the Arizona side. I'm not even bullish on the Cardinals. But, I do worry about that defense. I do worry about all this stuff. But to say that their season is over because their running back got hurt,
so basically
you're talking like a fantasy
player. Is Arizona
running backs are worthless. They're not. You can
is Arizona going to get into the playoffs?
You stick another one in, and it doesn't matter. David Johnson, great. Okay.
Is Arizona going to make the playoffs this year right now?
No.
Season's over, right?
Not week 3. They don't know they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, but if they're not making the playoffs, let's even go down the stretch. Let's go to week 12, 13, 14, and 15, and they have 4 wins at that point. They're resting everybody. Palmer's probably going to be in a retirement home by that point. Their season is done.
I agree.
If they're not, there's no way they think they can make
December,
the playoffs.
No argument. Hang on. Let's get an Arizona schedule over here. All right. Let's see.
Without
they
David
got Dallas
Johnson,
on Monday night, and they got San Fran. Okay, so they're now they're 3-1. All right. At Philly,
they're
Tampa.
underdog. Theoretically, they're not beating Dallas. They're an underdog.
LA
right?
and London. At San Fran.
Seattle. How many games are they even going to be facing?
Jacksonville. It's certainly a schedule that bodes well for a team being 500 going into December.
They will not be 500 heading into December. I'll take that right because they're going to lose to Dallas more than likely. They'll probably beat San Francisco.
I got them over 6 wins.
The Eagles will beat them. Tampa Bay is going to beat them. Neutral game site in the Rams. That's a toss-up. I'll even give them the San Francisco game. They lose to Seattle. They lose to Houston. They lose to Jacksonville. The Rams, I'll give them that game. They lose to Tennessee, lose at the Giants, or lose to the Giants and Washington and Seattle. No shot they make the playoffs. No shot they get the 7 wins. None. No shot. Hey, right there, Teddy. How about that?
Yeah, that's kind of fun. I like arguing.
Let's pick one more game before we wrap it up here for the day on the closing line. How about we end with an NFC East special here, Teddy? Winner, advances, can have a season here. 479, 480. Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles on paper. Looks like a big mismatch in favor for the Eagles, and most people would agree 3/4 of the tickets heading towards the Eagles. The line now up to 6.5 in some spots. Teddy, are we overreacting here in the Eagles and the Giants?
Well, what I say about 20 minutes ago, or at some point previously in this podcast, we were talking about the NFL offenses that didn't work in week 1. And guess what? None of them worked in week 2. So here's the Giants being one of those offenses that didn't work in week 1 and didn't work in week 2. And now they're going against an Eagles team that, which I forget what someone was ripping me. I was like, Eagles pass rush is questionable after the Redskins game. And the Phillies pass rush was like, did you watch the game? I'm like, oh, yeah, I said it. I did. I was, when you're talking, sometimes you say something wrong. A strong Eagles pass rush against a weak offensive line for the Giants. Mm-hmm. It spells mismatch in theory. Now, there are other issues to be factored in. Number 1, this line was 3.5. You could have bet it on Monday. Philly minus 3.5 for the Monday night game. Now you're talking about 6.5. That's a pretty big reaction to one game of football. Okay, the Giants get OBJ back. Oh, OBJ doesn't do anything, and the passing game doesn't work. Well, OBJ didn't practice. This week he's practicing. Of all the offenses that didn't work in week 1 and didn't work in week 2, the only one, in my opinion, that has any upside is that of the Giants, because there's one thing that it takes to succeed, in the NFL circa 2017. You need downfield weapons. You need to be able to throw the football. And while the Giants' offensive line is spotty and Eli is spotty, the Giants have downfield weapons. They can at times throw the football very effectively. Oh, by the way, the Eagles, it's not just Darby who's hurt. They're also missing, 2 of their top 3 safeties.
Watkins is also out, and McLeod. Yeah, 3 guys down. Yes, 3.
Yeah, it's significant. Yep. So we're talking about a Philadelphia team that is noticeably thinner in the secondary. And, of course, Eagles played good football on this field last year. They really did. They made you, if you were betting Philly, you made money. And when you talk about a team with some upside, I think it's there for Philadelphia. But this price range is wrong. It's just a wrong spread range for the Eagles. If I'm playing, I can only look at the New York Giants side. Look at the series history here. Again, teams that play every year, and you see it over and over. Last time the Eagles beat the Giants by more than 5, it's been a while. Last time they've been laying more than 5, it's been a while.
Yeah, no, looking in the direction over value, because I know there's a soft open on Monday, actually before the Giants even played, Teddy. It was about 3.5 that you could get at some offshore books. That quickly disappeared after the game was over. It's all about value betting here. If you had something a little bit lower, I agree. Even though I do think the Eagles win the football game, and I've been calling it all summer that this is a great spot for the Eagles to be in. I don't really take so much into that the Giants are 0-2 because your offensive line is not going to improve throughout the year. That's going to be a problem the whole year. Front seven for the Philadelphia Eagles, a very, very good front seven. Going to get some pressure on the Giants. I do think the Eagles win, but I'm not anxious to take them, Teddy, at 6.5 at the spot.
Well, I mean, if it's sitting at 6.5 on a Thursday, what do you do if you like the Giants? Be patient. No rush. If you start to see the line coming down, all right, that's when you buy. But if it's 6.5 now, wait. Maybe you find a 7. Maybe you don't. But there's no reason to lock in at 6.5 right now with the market still moving in that direction.
Yeah, I doubt that game's good. That game's more likely to get lower at that 5.5 number than it would be at a 7 number. So I do agree with you there. Teddy, want to leave anybody with something on Saturday or Sunday that they can, chew on, make a little bit of money on? Maybe a free pick, maybe something, a lean in the right direction, a prop bet. What do you got over there?
What do we got? Let's talk about the London game, the Jags and the Ravens. I like the Jacksonville side there. I like the under in that ball game. Baltimore, they got +5. They created 5 turnovers week 1 and 5 turnovers week 2. And I know that we have Blake Bortles. I understand that Blake Bortles is the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. I also know that the Jags are +7 in turnovers. They've created 10. No one else in the NFL has created more than 5. I know the Jags play in London every year. Baltimore's never played a game outside the continental U.S. And I know the Ravens just lost. You're gonna put Baltimore offensive players. You're gonna rank them. Flacco would be 1. Marshall Yanda would be 2. That is an impact offensive line injury. 6-time Pro Bowler, and now with him gone, they've lost 3 of their 5 starters from last year and their top 2 backups from last year. So it's an offensive line that is in disarray. Say what you want about the Jags. Offense stunk last week, and that defense still kept them in the game at Tennessee. Well into the third until that's a good Jaguars defense, a Jags defense that can win games. Jacksonville won on this field last year and the year before. I think they're alive to win this time, and I like the under in that game as well. So a little wake up and win on Sunday.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, Teddy. I'm leaning towards Jacksonville in that instance there. I just like what they're going to be able to bring to the table. I think it's also going to be a lower scoring affair. So getting 3.5, 4 points, wherever that's going to settle up, I would lean towards Jacksonville. Folks, that's going to be about enough time here for us on the closing line, September 21st, presented by SportsbookReview.com. I want to thank my guest tonight, Teddy Severansky. Check him out on Twitter at Teddy_covers. Always doing good things, breaking it down. You can also find him all over the channel here at SBR Sports Picks and SportsbooksReview.com. Obviously, you know full well about SportsBit there. So great time today on the show. Me and Teddy argue. That's what makes the show fun. Me and Big Man argue all the time. Me and the Teddy go head to head. We'll see how that Arizona team ends up at the end of the season. I don't think very good. Teddy thinks they're going to be okay. We'll see what happens here. Once again, thank you to Teddy. This has been the closing line presented by SportsbookReview.com. Check out all the latest at SBRodds.com and all the latest on social media at SBR Sports Picks from all of us at SportsReview.com. Good luck on your wagers tonight. We hope we helped you beat the closing line.